Hello, thank you for joining us on this training video on how to use the Contract and Client Information System for claim and activity reporting. My name is Shane Mantle. I'm going to walk you through the steps today, right from your initial sign-in until submitting a claim and exiting participants at the end of a program. We're going to look at all of these things. There will be a few things that are specific to certain types of contracts, and I will identify those as we go through. But I wanted to start here at the initial sign-in page and talk a little bit about BCEID. BCEID is a government-wide program for many systems, not just ours, for organizations to get their employees a business BCEID to sign into these systems to conduct business on behalf of your organization. So we require that every user of our system have their own business BCEID, and you can get your own business BCEID through your organization through what's called the Business BCEID Profile Manager. If your organization is not yet set up with BCEID, that would be your first step. Contact them and get set up. They will ask you to nominate a profile manager, who in that person's responsibility will be to help people get their BCEID. And if you're not sure if your organization has a business BCEID set up already, then you can contact business BCEID and they will be able to search and tell you. The reason we ask that every individual gets their own BCEID for signing into the system is that if you forget your password, for example, I am CJF test 10 here. If I forget my password and I followed the links to forgot my username or password, it would only send to the registered email for that BCEID. So that's one of the reasons we tell people not to share. And also, as I said before, the business BCEIDs can be used to sign into multiple systems, which is the other reason why we suggest that there is no sharing done. And when you register, it's one of the conditions of getting your account is that you don't share it. But it's quite easy now to add new users to the system, which brings me to my next point. For all of your agreements in the system, we will ask you to nominate one person who will be your Contract and Client Information System user administrator. This is not the same role as the Business BCEID Profile Manager. The Profile Manager helps people get set up with their BCEID. The user administrator for the Contract and Client Information System adds those users to this system and only this system. So the user administrator might be the same person as the Profile Manager, but does not have to be. The user administrator can be any person from your organization. A few points to note about the user administrator is they will have access to all of your agreements in the system and all of the details of each of those agreements. So if you're a large organization and you have multiple agreements in different departments, it's important to pick somebody who has the time to see all of those agreements and the time to add users to those agreements and the permission to see all of those agreements. If you are completely new, you get to nominate somebody, and by completely new, I mean completely new to the system. You've never had agreements in the system before. You can nominate your first user administrator, and we will set that up for you. If you have existing contracts in the system, there will already be a user administrator for your organization, and we will be in contact with you to tell you who that is, and you can instruct them to help you get set up in the system. If you wish to change your user administrator at any time as an organization, we appreciate that people leave and new people come in, or it becomes unsustainable for somebody else to be the user administrator. You can absolutely contact us and we can change the user administrator at any time for you. We do not add any of the secondary users. Only the user administrator can add secondary users. So we can only change the primary user administrator and that changes it for all of your agreements in the system. So that's it for BCEID. I'm going to walk you through the sign-in process, which, like I said, is just my business BCEID here and my password. And I hit continue. And you can ignore the fact that on user ID it says or personal BCEID. As I said, this is a generic sign-on page from BCEID. You cannot use a personal BCEID to sign into our system. It has to be a business BCEID. The first thing it shows me is a past history log. I'm okay with seeing that, I don't mind, but if you don't want to see it, you can click this Do Not Show Me BCEID Account Activity Log when I log in. But I'll leave mine unticked because I'm okay to see it. And the first page this will take us to is a list of all of my organization's agreements because I'm the user administrator. If you were not the user administrator and you were just a secondary user, you will only see the agreements that you've been granted permission to see. I see all of my agreements because I'm the user administrator, so they're all there. The most important thing on this entire page is this little green question mark here. This is the help facility. So I'm going to show you that first. And I've clicked on it. This is what it looks like. It is dynamic, so it jumps to, for example, the agreements overview, because that's where we were. But it jumps to wherever you are in the system to show you the different help options available. An important one for all service providers to note is in getting started, the very first thing, we have downloadable forms. We have the participant information use consent form. This is the form that you get all participants to sign. So you have given them, so they have given you consent for you to collect their information and give it to us in the system. The other forms you see are an intake worksheet, an exit worksheet, and a PDF of this whole guide. The intake worksheet and exit worksheets are only for you to use if you need to. You don't need to do them if you're able to key the information directly into the system. And what I mean by that is if you're sitting doing assessment and intake with the person in front of you, you can have them sign the consent form, and then when you enter them directly into the system, you don't need to have them take all of their name and details on the intake worksheet as well. Those are just for your use if, for example, you were running a classroom setting and you wanted to pass out the intake worksheet and key it into the system later. That's when you would use the intake worksheet or the exit worksheet similarly. So that's it for the help function. That's all I'm going to do. It's got everything in here. Everything that's going to be covered today is also covered in the help function, but I'm not going to go through it in too much detail because that's what this demonstration is for, is to show you how things work in the system. But if you've got further questions, I definitely would say the help guide is an excellent resource for you to use and for sending any new staff you might have here first to have a read and go through how things work in the system. Okay, so we're back to the sign-in page of the system here. The first thing I want to show you is how to add new users. If you are the system, or if you are the user administrator, the first thing you're going to want to do is add your additional users in. So we go here. I've just clicked on users. That brought me here. This is me, CJF Test 10, if you remember from the sign-in. I want to add a new user. So it's going to ask me for another one. I'm going to do test 09 as it's prompted me to there. And I'm just going to click on the validate button. First thing it does is it will tell me if that's a valid business BCEID, and it is. And so that tells me the first and last name. I will then need to fill in the details here. So these are all free form, so you can call these names whatever you want. I've just put in two options here: program manager, participant manager. It could be a coordinator, somebody from finance. It could be anything you like there. And I'm just going to key in the details here. So you need to have everyone's address and telephone number for keyed into here, and email. Every field is mandatory, and when you click save, the first question it's going to ask you is, it's going to say, if you have more than one agreement, as we do here, what do you want Ms. Test 09 to see? What agreements do you want her to see? In this case, I only want her to be able to see the training video agreement. So I'm going to disable all these other ones. So she would not be able to see any of these when she signed in. She is going to have the ability to submit reports. And the difference between enable and submit reports is enable means she would be able to edit the agreement and view all of the data, but not do monthly submissions. So she could draft them all, get them all prepped, but somebody else would be, either myself or somebody else I assigned to submitting reports, would be the one who can submit them. I want her to be able to edit, draft, and submit reports. So I'm going to click Can Submit Report. And I'm going to hit Save. And that is a new user created. That's all there is to creating a new user. If we go back to our users list now, we'll see 2. And similarly, if you ever needed to edit Ms. Test 09, you just click on her, go in, you could edit any of these details. If she left the organization, you could delete her there. We don't want to do anything, we're fine with it. We're just going to go back to the user list. And that's it. So you could add all of your new users right off the bat. The next thing we want to do is let's go in and have a look at our agreement that we're going to look at for this video. As you can see, I have multiple agreements here. These are all of my test ones and demonstration ones. I'm going to go in and look at this agreement for the training video specifically. So you can see what it looks like when you go into your agreement for the first time. You always have agreements, which was that page we just came from, participants, users, logout, and the help function are across every page. So you can jump to any of those if you need to. Right, I'm going to go through these other 3 tabs just quickly. We've got report here. It says enter initial forecast. We're going to do that in 1 second here. We're going to look at the scope. So this is the scope of your agreement. That was the paper agreement that was signed and agreed with your organization. So it should reflect a mirror image of that. So you can confirm the details here. You've got your regions, any participant criteria, and any eligible lines of service. Just a note, if you are a PBT contract and you're watching this video, assessment refers to any assessment, intake, or other employment readiness, or any assessment activity is covered under assessment line of service. You'll also note if you're PBT and somebody is getting unpaid work experience, we do not have an option for unpaid, so all work experience is recorded under work experience when you're inputting hours, which I will show you later on. So that's a quick note for PBT users. Cohorts is available for everybody. It's a very quick process to create a new cohort, and we will go through that. And then employer entry, again, this is specifically for project-based training, PBT, service providers. These are your employer partners. And that's defined as local employer or industry groups providing support and or contributions, cash or in kind, to the proposed training. This needs to be reported by the end of your contract, and a list of expected employer partners would be listed in the PBT funding agreement for each project. If you've got questions, you could connect in with your program area team in PBT, project-based training, to confirm those details. But you would add a new employer here. It's a pretty straightforward process. Again, this is just specific to PBT, but it's not a bad thing for everyone else to see. It does actually mirror in many ways how the system works for adding new participants, adding cohorts. It's a very similar process for everything. The core business area is dynamic, so you select the area and it starts to narrow it down for you more and more. If you select in-kind contribution, it asks for a description. If you select a monetary financial contribution, it asks for the amount. And 690. So we can save that. And under employers, there's our employer. And we can go in and edit those anytime if we need to. We can make an edit here. And now I want to look at participant entry and adding new participants to the system. So I'm going to come back here to this main tab at the top and click on participants. I'm going to add a new participant. You can see already in my list there, I'll go back just quickly so you can see it. I have got quite a lot of fake participants already enrolled in my various pretend agreements. Because I am the user administrator, I can see all of the participants across all agreements. So that's why they're all there, but I'm going to add some new ones here, which are specific for us to use for our demonstration. I'm going to do training video, and I am going to do 4. There's a reason I'm doing that. It's because I've already created training video 1, 2, and 3 before this. Because I wanted to work with a couple different clients just to give you a feel of what it looks like when you have multiple clients in the system. This denotes a required field. What that actually means is you can't save without at least these 4 fields filled out. If there's no middle name, you can tick that, and then it's only the 3 fields, and you'd be able to save this client. It would be incomplete because you haven't answered all the other questions, but that's what that star means. Every field is required for the record. Every field in the participant information is required. So that's important to note. For type of identification, we don't ask you for the number. We don't want the number. We don't want you to photocopy identification. If you select other, and for example, it was passport, like that, that's fine. We don't want the passport number. We don't need numbers off the identification. If you're in doubt about which IDs are acceptable, there is a more detail in the help function again up here. And if that doesn't answer your question, you can contact the program area and they'll be able to help you. Requesting a waiver. So if you have a participant who's unwilling to supply information to you, the most extreme case I've had is where somebody said their client was in witness protection. And so they didn't want to obviously give their phone number, address, and other details. So they requested a waiver, and that came to the ministry for review. If you request a waiver, what you're saying is this participant may not be eligible because they are unwilling to provide information, but I would like to see if they are eligible. That's the question requesting a waiver is asking. So if you're unable to get information from someone, that's what you would do. And that would be for any of the information from here down and the next page of demographic information, which we'll get to in a second. Waivers are rarely used. We don't expect a waiver if you're missing a phone number or an email. However, if the person's unwilling to provide an address, that would be a case for requesting a waiver. Or they're unwilling to answer any of the demographic questions, that would be a request for a waiver. And if you did request a waiver, you would have to put in a detailed reason as to why. And the ministry could review that and come back to you with more questions. Okay, so I'm going to go through this quickly. And we'll put in my favorite address, 1234 Fake Street, Victoria. And in most cases, your mailing address will be the same as your residential address. You can just tick this button and it disappears. However, if they are different, you've got that option to fill out the mailing address separately. If someone prefers not to answer the questions, they can do that. However, for example, if they prefer not to answer or you've ticked no and you are running a program that is specifically targeted at Aboriginal persons, then you may expect a call from your program area to question whether or not that person is actually eligible and whether you intended to tick no or prefer not to answer, or whether it should have been a yes. If you do tick yes to this question, it populates a couple more questions for additional information. All of the information is required by the federal government for us to report to them. So again, if you don't answer these questions, or if you don't answer these questions, you won't be able to complete the participant and you may get a call from the ministry. Did you immigrate to Canada? If you tick yes, it asks for the year. Highest level of education, it's just a drop-down answers. City of last school, school of last school attended, pardon me, and city of last school attended are free form, so you can type the answers. If it is out of province, like this example here, please include details that identify it was not in BC. If it's in the province, you can just put the town of the province, or the town that the school was in. What best describes your status before entering the program? There's again a drop-down list. If you tick any one of these employed options here, including self-employed, you're asked for a lot more information. They'd like to know average weekly hours, wage, what type of work it is. We're doing the most complicated case here of and as you see, it gets dynamic, so it grows with you. As you go down, it narrows the scope for the NOC code and for the NAIC code. Those don't necessarily match, but that's okay. I'm just trying to use it as a demonstration. If you tick yes to be an apprentice, it further asks you if you're registered. This one catches people out. You have to put in something in both of these fields, even if it's 0. So if the person's been there 3 months, you would type 0 years, 3 months. And alternatively, if they've been there 3 years and 0 months, you would type it like that. If you select any that they have been receiving any EI benefits, it asks if they were maternal or paternal. And that is it. Those are all the questions. If you had ticked in the drop-down box up here, unemployed, in-school training, in trades foundation, or not in the labor force, all of which are defined in the help function, and there's some quick ones here defined. The other ones are all defined in the help function, but if you had ticked any one of those, you would have immediately jumped down to this question. I'm going to hit save for that, and it's going to ask me if I want to enroll this person and what agreement I want to enroll them in. I want to enroll them in their training demo, and I'm going to enroll them for this month. And it will take me right over and ask me if I want to start putting in activity for that person. I don't just yet, and that's because I want to show you guys how to create a cohort first. Because a lot of you will be using cohorts, and this will save you a lot of time. So the first thing we got to do is get the system driving, and we do that by entering our initial forecast to the system. Now, this is our best guess of what our expenditure is going to be. I'm making this video in October, so I already know what my September actuals were, and that's okay. So in my first forecast, I can put in, well, we'll assume my actuals were nice round numbers just for the sake of argument. And I'm going to assume October would be roughly the same for me. I know I've got more things going on later on, so my expenses might be going up. Maybe there is a lull in January, or there's no activity going on, so it's quite possible to put in 0. I might change this to, maybe February is quite an expensive month. And same with the final month of the fiscal there. And I'm going to do this quickly for the next fiscal year, but everyone gets the idea here, I think. Okay, and if I wanted to submit any comments with this, I could say my initial forecast. The forecast is your best guess at what your expenditures are going to be. It's not meant to be divided evenly across, unless you really do operate in that you spend the same amount every single month out of your contract. Most people do not. It's not meant to be divided evenly. It's meant to be your best and most accurate guess at what it is you're going to be spending across the term of your contract. And this drives a conversation between yourself and the program area, so they can see if you're tracking on spending all of your money, or whether you're looking like you're going to have some left over, or whether you are very tight to your budget, and if they can have a conversation with you just to determine if that's accurate, and if they can help in any way. That's what the forecast does from a management perspective, is allows you to have that conversation with your program area team by inputting those numbers. And as you can see, an interesting thing happened because I said I'm doing this presentation in October. I can't change September anymore. Well, that's because September is past and October has already started. So I can't change those two, but I can change any future month. So I could take this and change that to 27,000 and hit save. And I can change the future forecast as many times as I need to. I just can't change the past. And the next question this always leads to is, when I submit a claim, then does the claim amount have to match the forecast amount? No, the forecast was your best guess. The claim amounts are meant to reflect your actual expenditure. So how you look at that is if, for example, you've spent less than you anticipated that month and your actuals are less It might be because one of your expenses has changed its timing and shifted out, so you would go and adjust your future forecast. Alternatively, you may have spent more than you expected, and you might have to refine your future forecast because of that. So that is it there. It does not have to match your budget amount exactly, as you can see here. My first fiscal year doesn't. Again, like I said, because that's a conversation. We want to know what you're actually expecting to spend. The budget was negotiated quite a while ago, and maybe things have changed. So we want to know what you're actually forecasting to spend to drive that conversation. We're going to have a look now at how we create a cohort. And if you remember from the very beginning, I said things all look very similar. Remember when we were employers, I said this is not a bad thing for everybody to see, even though it's only for project-based training, because it's all very similar. And as you see, cohorts, very similar. Add new cohort. Except it's a bit simpler. All it asks for is a cohort name and description. I would say let's use this example, which is Air Brake Training Semester 1, 15-16 Kelowna. Seems like a lot of detail, but the reason I would say more detail in the name is better than less is because you can actually then see, right by looking at the name, what cohort it is you're dealing with and who should be in it. And we'll see that in a second. Here, when we save it, it puts the cohort in a list over here. And that's how we select that cohort. So you just want to give it a meaningful name. Maybe you've only got one cohort at a time, so just calling it whatever makes sense to you works. But you might have more than one cohort. You might have two running at a time. All of those things are okay, and the system accounts for it. So you just want to name it something that's meaningful to you. We're going to click on cohort here. On this cohort, it tells me there's no members in that cohort yet. We know that because we just created it. So I've clicked on add members or edit membership. And I've got my training 1, 2, 3, 4. These 4 people I want to add to my cohort. And those training 1, 2, 3, 4, don't forget, those are the participants. We created training 4 earlier. So these are the participants here that are eligible to join this agreement. Okay, so now that we've done that, we're going to go back and we're going to look at how we report and do a claim. The first thing we see is the claim amount. Go in here. This is by far the easiest section of the whole system. It is just a big table, and you just put in your amounts here. Now remember, as part of your contract, administration is 10%, up to 10% of your actual claims. I'm just going to put in some random amounts here. And these are all the expenses related to this particular line of service. There are some guidelines on this in the help function, and as well, your program area team can help you if you've got questions on what constitutes eligible expenses according to your contract. But that's it. That's the financial side done. Obviously, you'll know your actual expenditures. And again, like I said, it probably won't be nice round numbers like that. But you will have all of that information. So now I'm going to go and look. You can see this is now in a drafted status because I've started to do my claim. We'll go now, and I want to look at my cohorts. Because what a cohort does is allows you to add all of the same activity to everybody in that cohort. And so all I've done there is clicked on cohort over there and then clicked on my cohort. Again, very similar to before when it told me there was nobody in my cohort. Now it tells me there's no activity there yet. So I'm going to click Add Activity. I'm going to add Assessment. Because assessment gets done in my cohort, I'm going to add Job Entry Skills, because Job Entry Skills gets done in my cohort. And I'm going to pick something else. You could have as many things as you want that get done in your cohort. And my recommendation is to add them all at the very beginning. And what I mean by that is, you see there's a start date here. I would put the start date for all activities as the first date of your cohort. This is September report is my first report, so I'm making this just September 1st, but for you it might be September 12th or whatever your first starting date is for your report. And I'm going to say my expected completion is November 30th. And there's no actual completion yet for assessment because we haven't finished assessment. And that may be true for you. You might do assessment at the beginning and you might do assessment at the end of the cohort. So each participant gets 10 hours of assessment for the month of September. We'll pretend that's what happened, is each participant got 10 hours of assessment in the month of September. That's what you're saying when you're doing this. And we'll say the total number of hours spent on it by the service provider were 40. That's across all participants for assessment. And I'm going to do similar things here for the other two ones I've selected. Now you very likely will have more than just 3 things in a cohort or 3 activities in a cohort, but I'm just trying to keep this example simple for everyone. And 12, and we'll do 48. Now, if you select anything in the SDT category, like specialized or technical skills or soft skills, it does ask for a little more information than just the start date and expected completion and hours. It asks for the course title. In this case, we'll keep it simple and it is soft skills training, and it asks for the type of delivery, classroom, and if there was an expected certificate, none. So that is cohort activity done. You could have, like I say, many more. And for example, you could add this at the beginning and say, well, they're going to get job entry skills in a future month, like October, as I've set it up here, but they're not going to get any in September, but I've added that in already. And by putting the expected completion date as November, this will automatically show up for me in my October report and ask me to enter it. So it's just a way of keeping things consistent for yourself, adding everything in at the beginning. You can report 0 hours on participant and the service provider side if that's applicable to that month, and then report the hours when it does occur in the appropriate month. So let's do that here. I'm going to hit save. And if I want to go and see what that looks like for my individual participants, I can just click on participants like I did. And it's going to bring up all my 4 participants there. I'm going to click on Training 1. Training 1 has no individual activities, but they could. There could be individual and cohort activities. I'm going to view my cohort activities here. And there we are. So we saw I put in 10 hours for participant hours, and I put in 40 hours in total for service provider hours. It's automatically done the division for me across that. I had changed the job entry skills to 0, so that's correct. And the soft skills, I had put in 12 hours and then 48. So it's divided all of that for me as well properly. So that's appearing exactly as we would expect it to see. If somebody has missed a class or anything like that, and you need to reduce or give them additional participant hours that no one else is getting, you can change their individual hours by clicking make an exception, as I just did, and then altering the hours there. We don't need to make an exception at this point, so we'll just leave it. That's the only thing you can change by making an exception, is if someone's done more or less hours than everybody else. If, for example, though, training number 1 here was getting more mentoring, or getting mentoring that was outside the cohort, you would add that as an individual activity here. And all I've done there is I'm on training number 1 and it's highlighted green. I clicked on individual activity and I clicked add activity. So let's do that for them. And maybe it's a one-off, and maybe it was just at the very beginning. You spent 10 hours with them face-to-face in September to help get them ready for the program. And it was additional to what everyone else was doing. And so it's closed. And closing an activity means putting an actual completion date in. So it was a one-off activity. It might not. It might be ongoing, just like our cohort activities. That's totally fine as well. But I'm just making a point here that an individual can have both cohort and individual activities at the same time. And we can see that. There's all of training 1's cohort activities that we did earlier, and there's the individual one we just did. And if we wanted to add another one, we could in this month. If we clicked on this by mistake, we can remove it just by clicking on that red X. And because this is a brand new creation as well, we could delete this whole activity as well. But we won't. We'll leave that the way it is, and we'll return to the agreement and submit the claim. So we've got our claim prepped there. As I said, the most common question I get asked is, does the claim have to match the forecast? As you can see, I have purposely done it so it does not match the forecast, and that's okay. What that information tells me as a service provider is I need to look and make sure I'm still on track with my future estimates, and if those need to be adjusted, then I would go and adjust those. I'm going to submit. It will confirm, did I do the participant activities, claims, forecast, or any potential exit forms? We did the forecast, we did the claim side, and we did the activity side. We don't have any exit forms because it's our first month submission and no one has left the program yet. So I'm just going to click submit. And we'll see this. There we go. Our 2 edit buttons are gone, and we can just view that claim now. And the status has changed from drafted to submitted. You can only submit 1 claim at a time, and all claims must be submitted in order. This claim is submitted until the ministry or your program area approves the claim. You will not be able to submit either of these. And the next one you'll be able to submit is your October one. That being said, you can edit your October claim. Let's pretend it's the end of October and we actually knew all of my actuals here. Let's just pretend we've done that. We'll go back to the agreement. And you'll see, because we've started that, again, it recognizes that we've drafted it. As soon as this is approved, the submit button will appear next to these 2. In the event that this was rejected, the status would say rejected. The submit button would be back up here, and these 2 would go from view back to edit. If your claim does get rejected, it's not a problem, and it just means the program area will be in touch with you on something they're querying, or they may ask you to change how you've reported something, and they'll just get in touch with you. Like, usually that is done before the claim is rejected, so you know it's coming back to you. And if you see it rejected in the system, you'll also see a little pop-up where it's got a section on notes, a note back to you saying why it was rejected. And then you do not have to start the claim over from scratch. That's why I say it returns to these edit buttons. And you'd be able to just go in and edit whatever the program area has asked you to change. The next thing I want to show you is exiting a participant. We're going to jump ahead here. We're going to, let's do this. We'll do our activity for October. I've selected my cohort again. And what I was talking about, by putting my dates as November, you'll see that all of my cohort activities have carried forward. So I just have to adjust the hours for these for October. And I'm just going to go again with some nice round ones just to make it simple on us all. If you remember, last month we reported 0 hours for that, and that was fine. And now we're going to report some hours for it, and maybe we'll report 0 hours for soft skills. And that's okay. We'll hit save. Okay, and again, we could go back. We can see what our October report looks like for the individuals. If we wanted to verify that the cohort had done its work properly, it's there. There we are. Exactly as we'd expected to see. So we're going to return to the agreement here. And there it is drafted. Now I'm going to go in and I want to edit let's pretend that we jumped ahead in the future. These 2 claims are approved and it is the first week of December, so I want to do my November report. So I'm going to go into my cohort first and report all of my November hours and close out all of my cohort activities. This is the first step if you've got a cohort, is to close out the activities, and by closing them out, you put an actual completion date in. And like I said, if you're following my logic of all your activities have the same start date and same end date, this is a pretty quick process for you. If there were any hours reported in that month, and this is November, we'd indicate those here. Again, we'll do these nice and round. Okay, so that finishes off all 4 of our participants. There's one step though remaining. If we wanted to exit those 4 people, we have to get them out of the cohort first, because it won't allow us to exit them while it thinks there's a possibility they still might have more activity. And so to get them out of a cohort, we go to cohort, select the cohort, and edit membership, just like we did when we were adding them. Gives us a pop-up warning there saying we're about to remove them. Are we sure? Basically, we are. We're going to remove them all. And that's okay. When we go now and look, we'll see something interesting has happened. All of their activity now will show up as individual activity. So if we click on this training 1, all the cohort activity from November will have been transferred to individual activity, and that's the step that allows us to exit the participants. So now if we go to participants, and when you're in participants, you can sort by agreement here. You just saw I clicked on it twice. It brought up everyone in my training 1 and my training video team, and they all have create buttons here. This means I can create an exit form for them. Good example right underneath is participant 11. You see there is no create button, and that's because that participant is still got ongoing activity in another agreement, in this PBT test agreement here. So that's a good demonstration. I want to create the exit form for training video 1, the participant. Did they complete the program? We're going to assume yes. Were there any qualifications? Maybe they got an industry qualification that was less than 10 hours as part of doing the program. Again, this is the same as participant entry. If you take any of the employed ones, you get the large pop-up section here. And if you tick any of the ones below that, unemployed, in training, not in the labor force, it's a very quick process there. That's it. That's a participant exit form complete. So we can hit save on that. And I want to find them again just to show you what they look like now. Participant 1 there says exit pending. That's because we've created their form. If we'd done that in error and weren't sure we wanted to exit the person, we could go in and edit that and delete the exit if we wanted to. And then it would just show a create button again. We're not going to. We're going to leave that as is, but it would be the same process for those other 4. Or pardon me, those other 3. If we wanted to create exits for them all at this point, we would then go back to our agreement. For us, it's the training video. And assuming, like I said before, we're imagining these 2 are both approved, we would have a submit button here to do that. So that's it for the training video. That is everything I wanted to cover. If you've got further questions on anything, again, I refer you to the help function here, which is very, very helpful. If you need anything other than that, you can contact your program area and they will be able to assist you and point you in the right direction. If they can't answer your question, they will help you find somebody who can. And that's it. So thank you very much, and I hope this has been helpful.